Hi, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Nate, and welcome to the Mono Poly Couples YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us today.
I wanted to make sure my microphone was on. It's on, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Hi. So today we're going to be talking about how to come out to your kids as polyamorous or non-monogamous.
Yes, and so we've done a video on how to come out to family and friends. And so this is a little different, right? It's talking about your kids. And the reason why it's different is family and friends, you can, maybe not tell them. Maybe they're, your cousin or your uncle or your coworker that you just doesn't really matter if you tell them or not. It doesn't change anything, right? And if you want them to know, then you tell them. And if you don't, then you don't say anything. But your kids are going to be part of your life and already are part of your life. And so it's a conversation that will likely need to happen or will happen at some point. And so we're going to help you kind of to guide that. And we're going to give you our experience and hope that you can use that to consider ways to talk to your kids.
Yes. So we wanted to share first what happened with how we came out to our kids. Me being polyamorous, Nate didn't really have to come out, but just still had to field a lot of questions when the kids are confused about the changed orientation of our marriage. So we opened the marriage about 2.5 years ago, and we didn't tell the kids for about a year. That was my request. Nate asked us to share with them a lot earlier on, but I was really, really just scared and nervous because I was so afraid that they were going to hate me, that they were going to think that there was something wrong with me, that I was some kind of like freak or monster. Even though I would never see a polyamorous person that way, I was so ashamed because of all of the monogamy programming that's conditioned into us. And it was really hard for me to be that vulnerable to the people that I loved the most because I was afraid of how it would impact them.
Yeah, I think that was the main hesitation. And don't get us wrong, we've grown up in a household that is sex positive. We talk about different orientations, sexualities, genders. And so our kids have grown up knowing that that exists, right?
Yeah.
There's a world that's not just sort of the black and white monogamy or nothing else world, but in general, polyamory had never really come up, or non-monogamy, because we didn't have any family or friends that we knew of that was non-monogamous or polyamorous. And so those conversations just never really occurred. And so this was going to be a new conversation, a new discussion. And then of course it had the personal twist in that it was talking about, their parents and specifically their mom, right? And so that was really an emotionally charged and sort of fraught with, I guess, concerns and a lot of emotions. And so that was part of the hesitation with talking to our kids about, this sort of new life that we were trying to build as a couple. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the kids knew that something was going on. When Courtney came out as non-monogamous and then polyamorous is sort of how we defined it, we had a lot of struggles. We argued a lot, and there was a lot of hard challenges that we went through. A lot of tension, a lot of emotions. And so I do think that the kids picked up on that. It's just that they didn't have maybe the right words to use or the right way to approach it, to ask sort of what's going on. And if they did, we sort of skirted the issue or didn't answer fully. And so, but, I just want, everyone to know that kids are very intuitive and they do know a lot what's happening or suspect what's happening. And so having said that, how did it go when we did sort of open up to the kids?
Yeah. So Nate would ask me probably once a month and I would say, no, not yet. I kept waiting to be ready. Okay, wait till I have a boyfriend or a partner that I can introduce, not physically necessarily, but just that they exist kind of in the
idea.
Yeah, the idea of it instead of it being an abstract concept. And that just wasn't materializing. And I was just like, no, we're not in a good place yet. So I don't want them to feel like we're not on the same page as this. And so finally one day, our oldest daughter, who was 14 at the time, asked me if I was having an affair. And I was just I immediately started crying. I knew that I was not going to lie to her about it. And I wasn't prepared in the moment to answer it. So I asked her to go get her dad. And so then we talked about it and we agreed that we needed to tell them. And so we went on a walk with our oldest daughter and just shared that, how there's different sexual orientations and different genders. It's the same way with relationship orientations. There's some people who are non-monogamous. And then I explained what that meant for me and let her ask whatever she wanted. And the first question that she asked was, how did her dad feel about that? And he shared with her, and he was honest, and he said, I'm adjusting to this.
Yeah. And it's been really, I told her it was really hard, but that we, her mom and I, like, we're still completely focused on each other and the family, and that we, had no intentions of splitting up over it or separating, and that we were going to make it, our goal was to make it work.
Yeah.
And that no matter what, we were going to be there for them, right? Her and her sister and brother. And so it was more of a reassurance that I was doing okay. Because again, that was her primary concern, that, I was, basically safe, and I was, still going to be there. And so that conversation went really well. A lot of emotions, of course, and a lot of questions to be answered. And like Courtney said, we were very honest. But, she said to us that she suspected something was going on for months, and just didn't know how to approach it, how to ask.
Yeah.
And so, that was, maybe we should have told them earlier, and that may have worked for us. We just didn't know. This is just how it happened. So,
yeah. And to back up a little bit, before we even thought about telling them, we looked into, like, what do the experts say on this?
Mhm.
Now, I have a master's in education in human sexuality, and this is not something that is really talked about, or that has been talked about, at least in the last, I don't know, 5 years. That's really been changing. But talking to people about being gay or transgender or any of those things is much more discussed, especially even in media. And so the experts are divided. Like, there's no real hard research that says this is how you talk to your kids, this is what you say, this is at what point you do, like. And that was hard for us because we're both very scientifically minded, and like, well, we're just kind of flying blindly here and figuring it out as we go. And so we had to really trust in the roots that we established with our kids of love and acceptance from the time that they were born, and just really rely on that and hope that was enough. And it really was. And so we decided to tell the younger two, who were 10 and 12 at the time, and both of them were all of them were super supportive. They just were shocked that I would even think that they wouldn't love me. They were so sad that I was sad, by considering that they would withhold their love because I was not like most moms.
Yeah. I mean, again, their main concern was that I was okay, and that we were okay, and that, I was part of this, so that, I wasn't coerced into it or forced into it or whatever it may be. And that, I was truly supportive and wanted Courtney to be her authentic self, and that we were still figuring it out, but we were always going to be there for them. And I think that the kids just really want to know that their parents are okay. And then they kind of move on, right?
Yes.
It has become almost a non-issue for us. And we sort of talk about it intermittently, and they ask every once in a while if mom's going on a date or has a boyfriend, but then they move on and they're on their PlayStation or they're talking on their phone or whatever it may be. And it doesn't consume their lives really. So,
yeah, it's not something that they think about. I think a lot of parents are concerned that their kids are going to get focused on the sex part of the behavior. And our kids have never asked about, like, what do you do on your dates, or what do you do when you go on overnights. It's much more about, like, the ethics of it. Like, are you dating other married men? Do their partners know what's going on? Do they know that you're married? Do they treat you well? Those kind of things. And I think that that's something that we as adults need to remember, that we tend to bring our own baggage into what prevents us from having these difficult conversations.
Yeah. And so again, we did find some resources. And so you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah. I mean, I reached out to some colleagues who are either polyamorous themselves or work with polyamorous families. And, a lot of them said to go with what you felt safe with, and to what you feel comfortable doing. There is a woman, a Dr. Schaefer, I think is how you say her name. We'll drop the link for her website in the notes. That she tends to have more resources for polyamorous families. So when both of the parents are polyamorous, that was something that Nate and I struggled to find, which is why we created this YouTube channel, is to find monopoly resources for families that don't look like the traditional polyamorous or non-monogamous, where we're more of a mixed orientation.
Yeah. And so again, just in general, I want to point out that I think kids are very intuitive. And if you are concerned, maybe start those conversations early. So maybe, have conversations about other genders or other relationship styles and sort of like build it up before just potentially saying, oh,
Yeah,
well, yeah, before you saying we're not
dropping the bomb.
monogamous or whatever, right? Dropping the bomb of this huge change potentially in their lives. And I agree with Courtney. A lot of times it's more the hangups that we have as adults and societal pressures and norms that we try to fit ourselves into, whereas kids don't have those as much, and they just want to know that their parents are happy and that they're going to be loved and that they're going to be there for them as kids, and that's as simple as it is sometimes. So
Yeah. And if you have specific questions about, like, how do I come out to my 5-year-old, or how do we bring it up to our 15-year-old, like, feel free to drop that in the comments.
mhm.
I'm happy to respond to those directly, just because every case is so different. But I think one of the things that I have found has been harder to introduce the concept of non-monogamy is because we don't see it in the media. So, like with different, like, same-sex relationships or bisexuality, transgender, we see that a lot more in the media nowadays than we did like when we were kids.
Mhm.
And so those are really great opportunities to start conversations about, like, oh yeah, like so and so's in the cartoon, like they have 2 dads, and like you can have a family look like this. But there's not really that representation in the media for polyamory or non-monogamy. And again, that's another reason why I share my journey on Instagram and other platforms, at Married MILF Diaries, because I want to help, like, normalize that
Mhm.
these types of people exist, like we exist, and we are good people and humans, and we
Yes.
are parents, and we love, and we, go to soccer games and all of the things. So
Yep. So again, if you have any questions, please put it below. And if you could like and subscribe, we'll continue to put out content to help educate and entertain and be there for you guys as you go through whatever journey you're going through, whether that be just a relationship struggle or non-monogamy or something else. So again, thank you for joining us. And as we always say,
can't
can't
stop,
stop,
won't
won't
stop.
stop. Thank you. Have a great one.